fantastic.
Okay. Sweet. Awesome. Well, welcome folks to the February 13th, 2024 meeting of the LTS working group. I'm your host, Mike Hausler, and we're just taking notes today. The Kubernetes and CNCF code of conduct apply, so please be kind to one another. It looks like we have a short agenda today, but does anyone new here want to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm first time here. Hi, I'm Park. My name is Marcin. Marcin, sorry, but I go by Park. I work at Canonical. I am product manager for Kubernetes. I started this role a couple of months back, and I'm pretty actually excited, to join the meeting here on the LTS.
Awesome, welcome. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Which one? I want to share one window. That one. Trying to find the right window. Preview is not showing up. Oh, that's because Open System Settings allow Zoom to access your screen recording. That is not something I have done. Okay, I will be right back. Allowing Mac to have permissions to Zoom. 1 second.
Computers. They'd be so much easier if.
But we are secure.
Bridget, I'm going to assign you as host, and then I'll take time back.
Great. So since we're waiting for Micah to come back, I'm actually really interested in, Perk, you're new to this. Can you tell us how you found out about this meeting and what your goals are in terms of what you're working on?
I found out about this meeting because Canonical, I think like Azure, we provide support, security support for more than the upstream Kubernetes. So upstream is 14 months or so. We do support for N-5, and at the same time, we are actually interested in share this workload if possible. And I assume that is the goal actually of this group, to share the workload. So I just came first time to hear what our discussion about, where it's going, and so on, and hopefully in the future I'll be able to contribute meaningfully.
Wonderful. I think one of the things Micah is going to show us is around the, we recently ran a survey in the upstream community, and we've just started looking at results. And certainly in the next few of these meetings, especially when the people who have, there were a few people who have been very actively engaged with analyzing survey data who weren't able to be here today. So this is just kind of a get started looking, and then do even a little bit more diving in. And so this is just, we surveyed folks who currently, how old are your clusters? How long does it take you to upgrade them? That sort of thing. Got some interesting insights to start with. All right, Micah, what are you hoping to share?
I gave you the host, can you share? Let me share the screen.
I gotta make you the host again.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
All perfect.
I was just making sure that we got some insights from persons. Okay, getting new people and finding out why they're here is actually really valuable.
Let's see. Now this is working. Great.
Awesome.
Share that window. And I believe you can all see my screen now. Great.
Yep.
Cool. So today's agenda, we just have where's that window? Great, I lost it. Sorry, this is a fun day.
I think it's in the tab. Yeah, there you go. It's in that tab right there.
Yeah, it's no longer showing up on my screen for some awesome reason.
It's zooming in weirdly.
There we go.
Maybe if you just, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I think we're all set now. Thanks for all the technical.
you're just showing the agenda because you're
Yes,
in the
that's right.
agenda tab. Okay, cool. I thought you were
Yep.
trying to go over the data. So yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Well, welcome, Perk. So yeah, we just did a survey to Kubernetes community and users and administrators of what they want out of LTS and what are their patterns so that we can understand better what's going on. This is my first time looking over the data too, so I'm going to be exploring it with you all. People with regulatory constraints. Interestingly, to me, this seems actually really high. The 45% said that they have regulatory constraints in running Kubernetes.
Are you, so
Are you able to see it? Oh,
what we're
it's not.
seeing on the screen is still the agenda.
Oh, does it not switch
Um,
tabs?
no, it
Interesting.
doesn't, it's not switching tabs. You could just close the agenda tab if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll just do that. There. Is that working?
Is anyone else
Not really.
seeing it's just frozen? Maybe stop
Yeah,
sharing
it's
and
frozen.
reshare the working group
I was gonna
LTS
say
data.
it's frozen for me.
Thanks, folks. Share screen. There. Let's try that again. There we go.
Now it's better. Yep.
Fantastic. This is perfect. Thank you.
So we have one of the first analysis here is people with regulatory constraints. So we see 45%, 45.5% have constraints. I guess that includes PCI, HIPAA, so maybe that's not so surprising. Anybody have any questions, comments here?
I'm actually surprised that we got this many people with regulatory constraints to answer the survey. Like, I'm not surprised if this is an overall population, but I am surprised if we somehow ended up with a sample that is representative, just because you would imagine that people with regulatory constraints are also going to be a little more closed-lipped about what surveys they're filling out, and they might also be less connected to the broader community. I'm interested. That's just kind of the sense I've gotten, but I'm interested in seeing what you think.
Yeah, I don't remember what regulatory, like if what we restricted this to, like if SOC 2 is in here, then most people are probably going to answer that, even if they're not like handling credit card data or FedRAMP or something like that. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Newest versions. So count. So this looks like number of people using a version.
Oh yeah, this one is really interesting because these are paired together. This is the people were asked, what is the oldest version of Kubernetes you have installed that you're running in your production systems? And what's the newest version that you have installed? We don't know why Scott can't unmute himself. That's strange. And clicking ask to unmute on you, Scott. I don't know if that's going to help.
Scott, no, I normally have the issue where it's the okay I have to hit at the top of Zoom.
Okay. Yeah, seems like I can unmute myself. Anyway, I was just saying, like, I think on the regulatory thing, I think on actually a lot of the questions we had add your own. So we had like, certainly FedRAMP, FIPS, SOC 2, etc. were pre-populated options, and then there was an open one where they could add their own.
Makes sense. So this was the newest paired with the oldest. So surprising number running 127, which at the time may have been one of the, I don't remember if 128 was out at the time we opened this. I think it was. And then paired with oldest version being, well, older than 121, but 125 being the oldest.
Well, those aren't in order necessarily. I mean, they're just kind of sorted.
Ordered by responses.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm looking at this and thinking, this is actually pretty good news. Because paired with the newest, they have the, N-1, N-2. But if we only really have like 15% count, that's not percentage. if only out of like 220 something survey responses, if only like 15 or so of them are actually that dire, you know, these so old we didn't have it as a choice, like that's a pretty good sign.
That would be interesting to sort based on like what percentile you achieve, you know.
What version spread are you running? Like almost like a bar graph or a box graph of seeing the range.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would definitely be really interesting. I think from just my own experience talking to like my own customers at AWS, like this whether they're running it themselves or having trouble upgrading, like this rings true that there's still a large number that are on quite old versions. Right. So for people with regulatory constraints, the newest version, 90% had 125 or later. So that's actually pretty interesting that the regulatory constraint, I mean, this makes sense to me that people with regulatory constraints are on newer versions, right? 90% of them at least. And then newest version with regulatory constraints. I don't understand the difference between these two.
You know,
Six.
I'm curious looking at this one because when you say I think they mean the newest version that they're on is
not the
1.26 or
oldest.
later. So if they're on 1.26 still, and this is, you know, a month or so later, this is people with regulatory constraints. They're on like 1.26 or later.
Right.
But if they haven't upgraded in the last, you know, couple months, they're already in trouble.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
This kind of to me is like this is your argument for, if not LTS, then at least better upgrade paths for much older stuff, because
right. I'm understanding this now.
You see what I'm saying?
Or later.
Like,
I'm thinking early. Yeah. 125 or not higher, but later. Yeah. So older. So 90%
no, it's higher. It's higher.
It's higher.
So like
okay.
1.25, 1.26, 1.27. But I guess what I'm saying is like people with regulatory constraints, if they're on 1.25, they're already in trouble. They're on 1.26, they're already in trouble. Like 1.27 might be okay for another few months. Like the clock is ticking on all these people. We've all had these conversations with customers.
maybe it would be good to add a comment to say rather than later, stick with either newer or older.
I agree. Yes. Or so here in this version, for oldest versions, for those with regulatory constraints, 55 out of 100 have 124 or earlier. So that's, to your point, Bridget, that they're running early version, old outdated versions in slightly more than half the case in their oldest versions.
And that's the interesting tension too, because presumably the intent of the regulatory constraint is to keep them safe, yet it might be constraining them to prevent them from being safe. It's like, oh, I can't get to the upgraded one because it's not certified yet, that sort of thing.
Yeah, this also makes
It'll
me
take
wonder
so long to certify it. Yeah.
This also makes me wonder about like the compliance programs that they're running. How like, I mean, not that I don't know that there's a whole lot we can do there, but yeah, like you'd think that this might surface as a risk in their compliance program.
Yeah, like how is a regulated team passing their compliance checks with an old version like that? I mean, I can give you a guess, which is depending on what kind of scanners you're using, which version of Kubernetes is kosher versus not so great might not be something the scanners really have good introspection into.
I would definitely agree with that.
So, and that's kind of a, you know, pushback to the scanner vendors that some of us, I'm sure some people who watch this might work at. Hey, think about what kind of alerts are possible to be done with your scanner.
Biggest complaints for people with regulatory constraints, disruption and cost capacity issues, deprecated APIs and regressions. I think the deprecated APIs, we all sort of feel like that's solved, but clearly it's not. Like it's solved in the sense that Kubernetes doesn't turn those on by default anymore,
Well,
but it used to.
and also, like, remember, we're coming from the vantage point of the now. And I had a little sync with Jeremy about this yesterday. And one of the things he pointed out is people kind of have the combo of scar tissue from last time I did a version upgrade, the API change broke me. They have that problem. And then they also have the I'm about to do the 1.26 sadness. Like they're looking historically speaking at like versions. We're like, we solved this. And they're like, yeah, you solved it in the exciting future that I can't get to yet.
Yeah.
Right.
None of these people are there yet. Like 129 is, I think, where all that sort of dries up and goes away.
And then I think same for regressions, but that's well, not the same. That's something that we always are fighting. I do think the disruption thing is also something that is somewhat mitigated now with the backward compatibility guarantees for kubelet with control plane. Are not solved, but at least blunted in that a lot of people that I've talked to, they feel like they have to move the kubelet in lockstep with the Kubernetes control plane. And so if you're doing 3 upgrades a year, that's 3 times that you have to go through all this and also upgrade all your nodes. And if that's challenging for lots of reasons, for stability, for just disruption of your workloads, like if you can leave it on an older version and tolerate that for 1 or 2 version or 3 version skew between data plane and control plane, that can help on the disruption at least.
And one of the things you just reminded me of is we should not ignore the word capacity there, because to your point about can you upgrade? Well, if you have either on-prem or with your cloud bill so much, guess what? You can't stop serving all your end users while you're upgrading, but you can't double your estate while you're upgrading. So like, what are you going to do?
Right. And for many folks, I think doing that live migration is scary and labor intensive still. I think like there's probably just a lack. I would suspect there's a lack of automation in the upgrade process, that like, oh, we have to manually do this thing to kick off, in the capacity world, the node upgrade. So I don't have to have an entirely new fleet that I switch over, but gradually update my fleet depending on the size of that fleet. Like that, there's a lot of risk there, and you want to be able to roll back. And so you probably have people like on a call or something doing that. If it's actively done in production, I'd imagine that's like goes into cost too.
That slows it down too.
Yeah, I've talked with customers who it takes them weeks or months to qualify a new version. So that cost is very real. And doing that multiple times a year is expensive.
And that gives us the I might be getting ahead of myself, but like the holy grail of script upgrades that people want. Some of that is just getting the upgrade done is terrible. I would like to jump as far as I can so that I can do the terrible thing less often.
I don't like going to the dentist because it hurts, so I'm not going to go. Or I'm going to go less. Common issues on how you validate apps questions. So a lot of manual testing of YAML, just kind of what we just discussed, like correlates to complaints on deprecations. Other examples point to lots of manual processes, wiki tracking, add-on support versions being mapped, not fun. I know there's even like vendors in this space now who are like almost their entire service is helping you with this problem of what add-ons am I running and what versions are they compatible with and everything. Let alone if you've written your own add-on or controller, then you have to figure that out for yourself. Checking release notes for deprecations. This is an interesting one, actually. Like, does anyone here, have you heard of heard this from customers or or done this directly about release
What,
notes?
the checking release notes or the
The release notes
trouble?
one specifically.
What I've definitely seen there's some tooling in the space out there that's attempting to answer the question, what's going to break terribly? And to your point about, oh, what is your version matrix of all the add-ons and custom things you did? Like that makes that challenging.
Yeah, I know. For my organization, we have like a release note party read where we all get in a room and silently read the release notes for half an hour. Every version, we do this every version, and it's a large meeting.
I will admit, yeah,
we're a
and I
managed
go
provider.
to the yeah, exactly. I will admit, I go to GitHub when the release notes are going to be merged, and I read them before they're even merged. I'm like, I want to see what we think is happening here.
Run example cube, no trouble. Also
I
deprecate
think
versions.
Cube No Trouble is a tool or something. I haven't actually used it.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah,
And
Cube No
run
Trouble
every-
is a tool. Also,
Okay.
Pluto is a tool in the same space. They are both CLI commands actually that you can run. But I've heard of I've heard a good thing about Pluto.
Do you want to put a link in the notes or in the
Let me
chat?
find it
great.
out. Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And then run everything in non-prod first, and that makes a lot of sense. Change windows. Who's using change windows? Not many. 18 out of 100. For people who are stuck, 121 are running 124 or older as the oldest. 50 of these are 121 and older. Cited cost disruption as blockers, cited removed features. 121 was PSP, is that right?
I think so.
I think that's right. 124 was Docker D removal, or Docker shim. Only 55 had regulatory compliance. And then
I kind of feel, I mean, maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I kind of feel like this specific pain, because the project has spent so much time avoiding this, I think this specific pain is going to get better.
I think so too. When do they upgrade? 36 upgrade at end of life or yearly or longer. I think also just the fact of both, at least AWS and Azure having extended version support or LTS products is probably, I'm curious how much of that overlaps with some of this data too.
But for both AWS and Azure, that just started.
Right? I mean, for AWS, that did just start. So there was some overlap with this survey, but it did just start. Yeah.
For Azure's, the first version that we support with LTS is 1.27. And so 1.27 is just this spring going to be coming up to its EOL. And at that point, I imagine that's where, the rubber really hits the road. But I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think we can draw a lot of correlations from that quite yet.
Yeah, I know the EKS extended versions started with 123, and that 123 extends through October of this year. So, yeah, there's a little bit of overlap, and that was announced I'm trying to remember.
That was announced in the last year, though. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was announced at
the beginning of
1.23. Yeah, it was announced at the end of the year.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of knock-on effects those choices from vendors have later. I think it'll be interesting. Hopefully people will
Um,
still do upgrades even if they have a little more time. Hopefully they're
Yeah.
not like, oh, guess I don't have to start upgrading off 1.23 until.
Our experience with OpenShift is they just run to the end of the life. And then
And then what?
we see pretty quick move at the end of the life cycle, and then a lot of people that just linger for a very long time.
That's, I
Like
worry about that.
as we have extended our life cycle, their use has extended to meet us where we are. That hasn't like become a situation where, you know, they're using it for 18 months. We move the life cycle to 18 months and they fit within it. They just grow whatever proportion with however much we've grown it, which is not great.
Continuing from people who are stuck, 72 are running 125 and older, excluded the answer that didn't know as newest. 41 have no regulatory compliance. 53 are self-managed or hybrid. So 53 out of those 72. So if your newest version is 125 or older, so you're running like you're not running anything new. Most, it looks like, yeah, 53 out of 72 are self-managed or hybrid, which that rings true to me.
Is that because
7 don't.
nobody is telling them they have to upgrade, or is it because it's even harder for them?
I think it's
Why
probably
not
even
both?
harder. Yeah, I think probably combination. Biggest challenges, 42 have feature removals, 24 of those are on 125. 120 have disruptions, 11 of those are self-managed, so half are self-managed for disruption, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And 14 say regressions. 30 running 124 or older as the newest version. So this is the old people. 24 have some form of self-managed or hybrid out of 30. A third claimed regulatory compliance, which that I don't know what regulatory compliance that is.
I'm gonna guess
I'd be
getting
curious to know.
recertified. Like if it takes too long to get recertified, so they might even be on the path to try. That would be an interesting question for a future survey. Is like, are you just like no, or are you're trying but you're not there yet? Yeah.
Yep. And change windows are not overwhelming.
Wait, I don't understand what that sentence means.
High upgrade, only 6 cited new features, so that's not a big carrot. But security updates are the most common response by far. That's part
good.
of that's
That's good. That means an LTS that only does security updates is what most people actually care about.
yeah, it's not features. Yep, that makes to me that makes a lot. This is actually one of the most interesting / validating slides of this so far. People with lots of clusters, so 100 to 1,000 plus. 6 of the 38, the newest version is older than 125, so most are at 125 plus. The vast majority are 125 plus for the large clusters, which to me kind of makes sense.
Wait,
Because
I'm not reading it that way. I'm
newest
reading
version,
oldest version. So only a very small number of them have a new version that's old, but also the oldest version.
you're
That's
totally
this
right.
is confusing wording, but like if we were looking at it as a graph, it'd be like the newest version is old, and the oldest version is even older. This sounds like people who have too much manual processes, too many manual processes. Because like only a few of them. Okay, so
are not. Yeah, only a few of them don't have something.
only a few of them haven't done any upgrading, but
Yeah.
most of them have a bunch of old stuff still.
Yes.
Is that how you would put this?
That's how I understand that. That's how I understand this. Yeah. Yeah. 16 out of 38, a little less than half, take longer than a month to upgrade their entire fleet. That definitely rings true.
And
It
I think
takes-
back to the point from earlier, I don't think this is necessarily just about the upgrade process. It might be about the capacity. Like, you can't just take everything offline for however long it takes to upgrade or disrupt
Yeah.
everything instantly.
Yeah. And I think from experience to customers who are running this many clusters, it's typically not in the same team. Like sometimes it is, you have a platform team that owns every cluster, but there's a lot of models where it's like we have different orgs all over the company that all run different clusters and they all do different things. People with lots of clusters and lots of nodes, 100 plus nodes. For the newest version is older. So this is confirmation of kind of the last slide. Like they have, most of them are running something newish,
But also a bunch of old.
but also a bunch of old. And most are on the larger end have regulatory or compliance.
Which goes back to most point about security. Like, what are the regulations about? Well, they're about making sure you're in compliance for something, probably security.
Yep. People with regulatory constraints are running newer than expected and older, though they didn't seem stuck. Longer support periods might help some. Backwarding security fixes only to older releases, I think would definitely help some. Skipping versions for upgrades could probably help more people and be an overall positive change. Just as we saw with the cost and capacity and everything for versions. And so if you do it less, you'll be more up to date. Deprecations are still top of mind. This is the exact question we ask: how long will it take people to get over that? And I think it's probably going to be at least another year before people are convinced. At least.
Oh, you're so optimistic.
Yeah, if you're still on if you're still running Docker, it's not going to be a year. You're still going to have that scar tissue for years. Bigger clusters take the longest. And there's a fair amount of manual process testing.
So that's a really interesting point, and I kind of wonder if that's a takeaway for this working group is validation and testing, just giving people the green okay button of like, hey, it's going to be fine if you upgrade, putting it in your hands, but you've run your checker and your checker says everything is fine. And I know that that's a very large, mountain to climb, but if we can give people a this is fine button, it at least speed up the manual process and testing.
Right. Questions found interesting. Skipping directly to the next version would be awesome. I think I've heard that before. LTS releases would reduce the amount of churn, especially LTS to LCS, so combined with skipping. Ultimately, in my opinion, LTS makes sense only if there's a complementary effort to make upgrades easier. Yeah, because if you just stay on the old version longer, it's going to just be more painful and you're just pushing down, which I think we've all seen. And it's difficult to keep up for large environments. We finish an upgrade and start another almost immediately.
That sounds like a house remodeling project.
It does. Yeah. I think one of the takeaways for me is that like people want to upgrade less, and we still are doing it 3 times a year. And I get all the reasons why, like so that if you want to add a new feature to Kubernetes, it only takes a year instead of 18 months if we were only to do twice a year. But I think it's pretty clear that people don't like upgrading, or the process of upgrading rather.
Well, they don't like things being broken. and they don't like things changing in a way that breaks them.
Yes.
If you could add things that are nice, but do nothing negative, of course people would be fine with that. It's like,
Yes.
except I'm just going to reverse myself and say, nope, that's not right because you have to recertify the new fineness. So
Yep. Absolutely.
that skip level upgrade thing starts to sound like it solves a lot of problems. Because if you tell people, oh yeah, you can totally do 3 upgrades in a row, it'll be great. And they're like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's often not pretty. Yeah. Well, this has been really interesting. I'm curious to see. Maybe we'll try. I'll try and talk, I'll talk with Jeremy about trying to get some more like visualization of maybe some of this data, like we're talking about, like some of the ranges of individual responses on oldest and newest and what they're doing. That could be, I think that could be really interesting, just from a visual perspective.
Yeah, I think Lori Apple was working on some of that. That was very interesting. So seeing more of the results of that, or know that that's ongoing, would be cool. I would just love to hear more thoughts from, the folks who have spoken up and the folks who haven't. Like, what's standing out to you? What does this make you wonder about? Or which stuff are you thinking, oh, that's where we should be looking?
I'm interested to look more at the data around like people that are leveraging the kubelet version SKU for upgrades to see if that's actually something that people are doing, or is that something that we could sort of raise awareness that yes, you can actually upgrade. But obviously with all the challenges of upgrading across 3 versions, but you can do so with a single workload disruption, presumably at this point. And that gets you to the sort of coveted once a year upgrade. So I'm interested in going back and seeing like the people that say they want to do once a year, are any of them actually leveraging those capabilities today? And I guess maybe with some of the things that we're seeing from this data is maybe they're not. I guess when did that happen? I think that changed in 125. Looking back,
There was always n-2 support, so it was
yeah,
not, but now with n-3, yeah,
yeah.
not just n-1. Yeah.
So that's an interest that I have, is figuring out whether people are leveraging that. We sort of position that as a certain upgrade pattern in OpenShift, and customers are certainly leaning into it. And we're trying to, we do it at n-2 currently, and we're trying to expand that to n-3, as Upstream has. And certainly our customers seem to find value in it. So I'm interested to see if that's like something that's broadly happening or not, and whether maybe, the project itself could lean into that in some ways and encourage it.
Yeah. I think from my discussions with some customers is that like they're already going through all the process of having to update all their YAMLs and make sure their add-ons support the new control plane version. And so they're doing all that, and they're like, why not update the nodes too in most cases, because of the I think there definitely is a case to not have to do that, but I think that's the mindset is we're already doing this. Let's just do the nodes too, so it's all the same version. And if there's a CVE or whatever in Kubernetes, it's not, well, the nodes are impacted, but the control plane isn't. And yeah.
Yeah, certainly like those people that want to get to 1 workload disruption per year, well, what are you doing about CVE fixes? Like certainly you're having to run a CVE out the door at least more than once a year too. So
Once a month, right? I mean, if you're running Linux and you're running,
yeah.
I mean, they should be. I think there's that subtle difference between you should be patching for these CVEs, and Mo can probably attest to the reality of, what the world looks like from, the Kubernetes security point of view. Like,
Micah can too. We're both sad together on this
We
one.
are.
Yeah, I enjoyed the chaos that the Windows CVEs caused because we found so many like old processes. They were like, yeah, I built this once years ago. Seemed to be working fine. I haven't touched it since then. I have absolutely no idea who owns this now. And I have no idea how to patch it.
What was it? The Windows CSI proxy or whatever? Like,
Yeah, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that was built once when it first came out, and we have no process for updating that anywhere.
well, finding all of these is what this is about. And I know we're close to or at time, but thank you for that link, Micah. I'll put that in the notes. Anything else people want to talk about? Or Mike, if you can bring us home.
yeah, I think that's all we've got for today. Thanks everyone for joining. We will put the recording up and see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. That was super interesting. Bye.